Hey everybody, just wanted to make a quick video over net oil pressure. My last video that I made with the compressor changeout, I kind of touched, or I mentioned net oil pressure, but I didn't really go over what it was. I was thinking that some people out there might not know what it is, so I just wanted to make a quick video kind of going over what it is, how to find it, and some common issues that I see with it. So right here I have pulled up, this is an Emerson bulletin. I forget exactly where I got this screenshot from, but as you could see, down here at the bottom, it is Emerson Climate Technologies, which Emerson is who makes Copeland. So I'll just read this paragraph real quick. It says, in normal operation, the net oil pressure will vary depending on the size of the compressor, the temperature and viscosity of the oil, and the amount of clearance in the compressor bearings. Net oil pressures of 20 to 40 are normal, but adequate lubrication will be maintained at pressures down to 10 psi. The bypass valve is set at the factory to prevent the net pump pressure from exceeding 60 psi. Okay, so let's kind of break this down real quick. So first kind of important thing that it talks about is it says depending on the size, the temperature, and the viscosity of the oil, right, and the amount of clearance in the compressor bearings, which that I mean, I can't even begin to measure that. Like that almost has no bearing on my determination of net oil pressure because we don't do anything with that anyway. Size of the compressor, temperature, and then viscosity of the oil. The biggest thing that we will be able to control out in the field is going to be the temperature and the viscosity of the oil, right? So viscosity, that's talking about your POE 32 or POE 68, right? Those are the two most common that I see, where one's like a 150 ISO, which is a 32, and then like the 68 would be a 300 ISO. Pretty much all of your Copeland compressors are going to take your POE 32. The only time I ever use 68 is in like Carlisle compressors because Carlisles need a thicker viscosity, right? And then maintaining proper temperature of your oil is done through really maintenance of your racks. So making sure that your head temperatures are good, your return gas temperatures are good, stuff like that. That's how you're going to maintain proper temperature of your oil, right? Go on to the next part. Net oil pressures of 20 to 40 psi are normal, but adequate lubrication is good down to 10 pounds, right? So for those of you that have worked on like Centronics or that have worked on compressors with oil fail controls, you'll notice that the set point to where they start to fail is at 9 pounds, right? So that's where those oil fail controls like the Centronic 3s or your Penn and Johnson controls, you'll notice that's where they start to time out is at 9 pounds. And that's, that's why, is because once you start getting below 10 pounds, you're not going to have good lubrication for that compressor, right? 20 to 40 pounds is normal. Typically what I see out of a good running compressor with a good net oil is like 45 pounds, but I don't usually start to get too concerned until I see it drop below that 20 pound range. Really just because of this bulletin right here. Okay, so gone over this. Let me kind of show what we're looking for, how we're getting that net oil. Okay, so, oops. Yes, bitch. All right, so let's see. Let's draw just a quick, this would be like a 2D or 3D compressor, right? Where my suction line is coming in right here, discharge line will be going out, and then, I have my head, my suction bell, and then this guy right here would be my oil pump. All right, so that little thing sticking out in the front of the compressor, that's my oil pump. Whoops. All right, so when I'm checking net oil pressure, what I'll do is I'll take a gauge, typically my high pressure gauge. You'll have a port on your oil pump and then low pressure gauge coming off of my compressor suction. Now, a lot of the times, if I know my transducers are working, I won't use this gauge. I'll just use this one and I'll look at my controller to see what my suction pressure is. But personally, the best thing to do is put a high pressure gauge on your oil pump, a low pressure gauge on that individual compressor, right? And what we're doing is we're measuring the difference between our high pressure oil pump. We're subtracting the low pressure of our suction, and that's going to get our net oil pressure. Or I'll hear some people call it an NOP. I don't know why I was going to say NEP. An NOP, right? I just call it net oil. But that's how you're getting it, right? Is you're taking the high pressure from your pump minus the low pressure from your suction, and the difference between those two is your net oil. All right, so let's say I have an R448 rack, because that's pretty common. And let's say it's my low temp rack running at minus 20 suction, right? That is going to be a 10-pound suction, right? So I should be measuring 10 pounds right there. Now, what I'm looking for on my oil pump is going to be about 55 pounds, right? Because let's just do basic math. 55 minus 10 is going to be 45, right? That's going to be my net oil pressure right there. Okay. Now, according to that Copeland bulletin, I can have my net oil pressure all the way down to 30 pounds or to 20 pounds. So I can have my oil pump pressure right here down to 30 pounds, because then that would be a 20-pound net, right? And then according to that Emerson bulletin, I shouldn't really start being concerned until this number gets down to 20, right? Because it said it can maintain good oil down to 10-pound net. But typically, once I see it start dipping below that 20-pound mark, I start getting concerned and I start looking into what the issue is. Okay, so that's how you get your net oil pressure. Let's talk about, I would say, the two most common issues that I see when I have a low net oil, right? The first one is low oil, right? So if this is my sight glass right there, my oil is going to be below the sight glass and I have no oil. I can't see any oil in my sight glass, right? Where typically I want to see, for a Copeland compressor, I want to see like half to 3/4 sight glass, right? So I would say that's one of the most common issues, is I just don't have oil in my compressor, right? And that's where I start my troubleshooting. Why? Is my oil float? Do I not have enough oil in my rack? Why don't I have enough oil in my rack? I did before, right? So do I have a leak? Is my separator not separating, right? That's when you start going into that oil circuit and figuring out all those issues. The second most common thing I would say is, in these compressors, there's a pickup screen right down in here in the bottom left of the compressor, right? You'll see there's a plate right here in the bottom left of that compressor, and behind that plate, there's that screen. So what happens is you have your oil, right? That oil gets sucked up by this oil pump. Okay. Gets sucked up by that oil pump and then dispersed into the compressor, right? What that screen does is it filters the oil, right? So the oil comes through the screen into your pump, right? So what happens over time is that system gets dirty, rack gets dirty, people don't braze with nitrogen, or, whatever it is, which I'm not saying you should braze with nitrogen on a rack, because I don't believe you should, but that's a conversation for a different time. The rack gets dirty over time. This oil is going through that screen, and this screen is doing its job and catching all those particulates, right? But then oil can't get through that screen because that screen's so plugged up, which means it can't get to your pump, and you end up having low oil pressure because you don't have oil in your pump because that screen is plugged, right? Pretty easy fix. At that point, you just isolate the compressor, you pop that screen out, clean it, put it back in. Typically, you're doing an oil change on the compressor at that point, so you'll have to be ready to make sure that you have oil on hand in order to fill that compressor back up. So Yeah, that's pretty much it. If I miss something, let me know, or if there's something that you don't comprehend on this, let me know. Um, like I said, I just wanted to go over something about net oil because it is pretty important in our jobs as supermarket refrigeration technicians, is maintaining proper oil to that compressor. If you don't maintain proper oil to that compressor, you're going to shorten that compressor's lifespan by quite a bit. So just wanted to do a quick video on that. So appreciate y'all watching. Like, subscribe. Hope y'all enjoy it, and thank you. Later.